Hello, everyone. Welcome. If you're watching the replay, we'll be getting started in about 8.5 minutes. I was a minute and a half getting on the live stream today. Let's do a quick, what do I need to do? Oh, I need to change the website. I need to change the front page of ProfessorMesser.com. And that's not the right thing there. Which one is it? Is this one right? No. Right there. There it is. It's one of these. We'll be getting started shortly with the Network Plus Study Group. Settings, promo bar. Change the promo bar so that it says my free Network Plus Study Group is right now. Click here to join us. To join us. No, to join us. And it should redirect to /live. /live. Reset the cookie for all you people that hit it and save the changes. And there you go. That's working. We don't need that anymore. Close that. We need this. Very good. What else do we need? I'm recording here. We do a camera check. Camera check. Hi. Hello, camera 1. Hello, camera 2. Camera 2. Let's put something up on camera 3 to look at. And camera 4 to look at. How about the bird feeder? Sounds like a plan. Should also bring Skype up for later. We'll put Skypey over here. And there is no food in the bird feeder. How you like that? Well, that's just sad. I am not doing my job clearly. That works. We can very quickly, though, go to camera 3 and camera 4. And camera 3 with me and camera 4 with me. That looks fine. How about camera 1 with the lower third? That looks good, too. All right. That all seems to be all right. If you're watching this in the replay, you obviously can't participate in the live Q&A. But if you are here live, you can pop open a new window to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. And that will take you to the Q&A. And it's also on ProfessorMesser.com/live. There's a link there to the Q&A. That takes you right to it. What else is going on? This is it. I think we're good. The stream is working. You're here. I've got all of this sort of going on. I did fill the bird feeder up yesterday for the people in the chat room who are giving me grief. But they ate it all. And then I've just been preoccupied today. And that's no excuse, is it? How are we doing here? I think we're doing all right. We got everything we need. We do. There's that. There's this. Okay. Announcement emails / social networking thing should go out right now. Let's see if it actually did by going to the tweeter. And there's the tweeter. That worked fine. All right. Very, 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 very good. That's very good. Baseball has been very, very good to me. I think the Network Plus stuff, I haven't actually gone through the Network Plus. I guess I wrote it last week. So let's quickly refresh, shall we? What will we be talking about today? All right, we'll be talking about that. All right, we'll be talking about that one. Can't really read that from where you are, can you? Make sure you can't. Which one of those would I be most likely to do that thing? Which would be the best fit for a thing? Why would I use that? What the heck is that thing? All right, I think I'm refreshed. I remember that now. They sound like very simple questions, don't they? What's up with that thing? How much simpler can it be than that? I'll put this over here. Move back our things A nice spray of Singer Saving Grace before we get going would be nice. Oh boy. Let's see if that works a little better. All right. We're recording, we're streaming, we're recording. Okay, we're good. We are so good. Getting started in approximately 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Approximately. I'm going to start about 20 seconds before the top of the hour in your real-time world. But in my world, it's really the top of the hour. It's one of those things I noticed that the live stream stuff on YouTube, it takes a little bit to get re-rendered and sent to you in real time. There's always some little delay. I've got this delay turned down really low. They at least give you the option for interactive events like this one, where it is interactive. I'm clearly missing something. There's something I don't have here. No, I think I'm okay. I'm a height. Let's quickly go through and make sure this thing is still working. Let's try the reconnect. I think this is all going swimmingly. All right, got stuff on the screen to show. Let's connect to that one. Oh, that one's a Linux box. This one is not. That's a Windows box. Let's get that one going. All right. Those are looking pretty good. Hello, chat room. Hello, hello. Welcome. Welcome, my friends. Look at this, got that. I think we're all set. I think it's just a matter of the clock getting to the top of the hour and me talking about things. And me staying awake. See if I can do that. I think we're in pretty good shape today. I think I'm running out of singers. It's hard to see because there's a label there. Well, we got a good bit left. Maybe time for a refill. All right. 30 seconds. 30 seconds, Mr. Sinatra. 30 seconds. And we'll do a thing. So let's get the graphic going there. Let's get, okay. That all looks good. The spinning red lights are my video recorders. I'm recording this. So those are both my feeds, both my real-time feed, which is this little screen that's on my right, and on the left is the preview feed that when I click a button you will see, and it's recording both of those at the same time. And I think it's time to get started, so let's do that. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2017 Network Plus Study Group from ProfessorMesser.com. I'm your host, James Messer, and during this hour of study group show, it's just Q&A for an entire 60-minute period, and then I open up phone lines, and we talk again for probably another hour or so about anything you'd like to talk about. So it's really two shows in one. You're getting the most for your money, and considering this didn't cost you anything, you probably are getting exactly what you thought from your money. This is a study group that I do every month. It's something that I like to have everyone participate. So I'll show you in a moment how you can answer the questions along with everybody else and interactively know exactly what you think the answer might be. You can lock it in, and then you can see how everyone else did. Now, if you're watching this in the replay, you obviously won't be able to answer interactively. There's no way to do that after the fact. You have to be here live. So you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar to find out when the latest live events are. Of course, you can always follow what we're doing here at Messer Studios by following us on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook, on whatever your favorite social media is. You type in professormesser.com/Twitter/Facebook/ whatever that happens to be, and you will find it somewhere in there. You will also notice that there is a live chat room available for you right now at professormesser.com/live. That's always there whenever we have a live event. There's a chat room on the screen. You can also access the live event chat from any of the pages on my website. So that's a great place to go. You'll notice there is no live chat if you're watching this on the YouTube. You have to go to my website and see that live chat to be able to do that. Also, don't forget about the voucher discount on my website. Don't pay full price for your vouchers. You should go to professormesser.com/vouchers. There's a lot happening here, not with the Network Plus or networking things. There's some things happening there. There's a lot happening with Security Plus, which is next week. We'll talk about that. I want to thank everyone for supporting the website. You're supporting it with your purchase of study group books, your purchase of course notes, your purchase of these offline training courses. You can, of course, watch every single one of my videos online for free. So that is also a great support as well. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see that as well. There is a lot happening here with other resources as well. You may have realized we have some pop quizzes that we've put online. So these are the study groups that we've done. We've done some Q&A, and I've archived the previous questions to this Q&A. So you will be able to go to professormesser.com/popquiz, and you would be able to take some of our older study group questions. I have groups of 20 there. So that can help as well. That might get you some free Q&A. You can go through maybe some questions and try to figure out what the answers might be. It'd be a great way to do that. There are also audio replays of this available. You can, of course, go to YouTube and watch the video replay. Some people like to have it in podcast form. And if you're one of those people, you can go to professormesser.com/podcasts. And you're able to get to the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus study group replays that way. Well, I told you would be able to participate in real time. Now, if you're in a browser, I've got a link for you and a quick link. You can go to professormesser.com/QA, and you're on the QA page. It's that simple. Some of you are accessing this through the Socrative student app. You can download that from your app store of choice, and you can click on the room name, and the room name you're looking for is Professor Messer, all one word. Make sure you spell it correctly or you will not see the question in the room. You type in PROFESSORMESSER. All one word. Now, if you're in a browser screen, you can simply type professormesser.com/QA, and you'll go right to the question. I'll show you what that first question is in a moment. We'll give it a run through. The Network Plus exams, what we're going to be talking about today. Network Plus, the current version is the N10006. This was released in February 28th, 2015, so a couple years now. Usually we see these updated about every 3 years or so. Sometimes it's longer than 3 years, but generally the 3-year mark is what CompTIA generally sticks to. And you'll notice that if you count forward from February 2015, that means somewhere around the end of February 2018, we should at least start to see the newer or later or updated version of the exam. Now, that means you have plenty of time to study. If you're studying for your Network Plus, keep studying. There's no reason to wait until a new version of an exam is released. Plus, they always have an overlap period, so you will have at least 6 months after that time frame to continue taking the current version, which means at this time next year, you'll still be able to take the N10006. So that's something to think about as you are planning your process. Never wait to get certified. There's so many good things that can happen for having these certifications. It's all negatives if you're waiting. There's no good reason to wait. So absolutely, you want to do that. Now, if you've gone to professormesser.com/QA or you've loaded up the Socrative app, then there's a question that you see waiting for you there. And the question is, in 2016, how many people visited the Smithsonian National Museum of American History, home of the Star-Spangled Banner? This is in Washington, D.C. It's our national museum. It is one that has the Star-Spangled Banner is the one that is a nice flag display that they have set up. It's an amazing website they've got set up that can show you some of this, but seeing it in person is quite remarkable. And they have a lot of people that come to this very specific museum. The Smithsonian has many different museums that you can visit. The Star Spangled Banner happens to be in the National Museum of American History. They have a lot of great things in that museum as well. Highly recommend you go there. Now, if you go to professormesser.com/QA, you're able to answer this question. And I've got a number of people that are putting in their ideas: 463,000, a million, millions, 1.6 million. That's very, very specific. And probably some of you have already been here and seen this at the museum. So you can put that in. If you see that question and you're able to answer that question, you can stay right on this page. All of the Network Plus questions will appear right where you are. So you know if you see this question and you're able to answer it, you've done all the right things. You can relax now. You won't have to type in anything else to get to that particular page. The reason I ask about the Star Spangled Banner is that today is Flag Day. It is June the 14th. In the United States, Flag Day was created by the Second Continental Congress in 1777. That's when we ratified our flag and said, this is the flag of the United States. So we have a whole day that celebrates that, and today is Flag Day. And as you can see from this slide here, I have approximately 3.8 million people visited the Smithsonian National Museum of American History in 2016. So a lot of people go through that particular museum, and it's a great museum. So it's a nice place to go. Let's move into the Network Plus questions, shall we? Usually when you sit down to take your A+, your Network Plus, your Security Plus, and other CompTIA exams, they're a mixture of different questions. There are certainly the multiple choice questions that you're probably very accustomed to, but the first questions you'll be faced with on the exam are a series of what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. Those questions might be fill in the blank. They might ask you to perform a function at a command line. There might be matching. There might be one where you have to put things in a certain order. And what I like to do on my study groups now is give you a performance-based question to start things off. And in this question, you're going to have to make a decision about 7 different protocols. The question is, categorize the following protocols as secure or insecure. And I have 7 protocols here for you to determine that. The first is HTTP. Protocol number 2 is SCP. Protocol number 3 is SNMP v2. Protocol 4 is Telnet. Protocol 5 is TLS. Protocol 6 is IP. And Protocol 7 is SSH. So that would be a good one to try to figure out. There is a whole section of the exam, and we'll talk about this in a moment, that talks about protocols and security and networking and whether some protocols can be considered secure and whether some protocols are considered insecure. If you think you know what the answers are, you can go to professormesser.com/QA, and then you'll be able to answer yourself. So this will be, I guess I should, and you'll see that right now as I click the button. Now you're able to type in. It's a fill in the blank. You could put, use the letter S or I, for instance. So you could say, if you thought they were all insecure, you would say 1I, 2I, 3I, 4I, 5I, 6I. You can just go down the list. Make it very quick to type those in. You don't have to type the whole thing. This is something that also, if you don't know what the answer is, take a guess. And that's something on the exam that you might be able to get some kind of partial credit. So try thinking about what that might be as well. This is one where whenever you start looking at trying to figure these things out, it's important that you know these protocols. A lot of people on the exam think that this is all rote memorization, but it's a pretty important thing to work through. These protocols are used every day, all the time, and especially if you're setting up network links to third parties, it's useful to know what type of protocols you should be using and what type of protocols you should not be using. So lock in those answers. One important thing is not to put them in the chat room. You want to put them on professormesser.com/QA. So that's the place you want to go to answer these questions. So as you think about this particular problem, don't Google it. Take a guess. You want to be able to see if you really know what some of these protocols are. Now, if you think you know what they are, maybe you can also, in your mind, know what those protocols do. What do those abbreviations stand for? So there's really multiple answers you could give to this question, not just secure or insecure, but what is that protocol? What does that protocol do? Might be a useful one to be able to work through with all of those answers. So we've got a number of you that are already answering and locking in those particular answers. We obviously can't show you the summary of responses here because it's not a multiple choice question, but I can see the answers that are coming in. Some of you aren't quite sure what these protocols do. Others have a pretty good idea. See a number of correct answers coming through as to what those protocols do and how you should reference them whenever you're working through all of those different protocols. Let's see what the answers are. We'll disclose them here. So HTTP, that is the hypertext transfer protocol. It is an in the clear, unencrypted web server communication. That's definitely insecure. Protocol 2 is SCP. SCP is the secure shell that you would have whenever you're doing a file transfer. You could also use SCP for a number of other encrypted mechanisms. It is definitely a secure protocol to be able to do a secure copy, which is what that SCP is. The SNMP, the Simple Network Management Protocol version 2. Version 2, insecure. Version 3 is finally when they added encryption to it. And so maybe that's a trick question, but you do need to know the differences between SNMP version 1, version 2, and version 3. All three are listed in the exam objectives. Make sure you know them. Number 4 is Telnet. Telnet is an in the clear terminal communication, not encrypted and therefore insecure. TLS. TLS is also what we call SSL, is our encrypted web communication, and that TLS is definitely a secure in being able to do that. IP itself provides no inherent security, at least IPv4. IPv6 has some, but it itself is not secure. So we're going to say insecure on that one. And then SSH is definitely secure shell. That's a secure communication. And that is one where you're definitely encrypting that terminal communication between part 1 and part 2, the device 1 and device 2. Not really parts there. We're talking about devices doing a shell, a terminal communication. So that's your summary of those 7 protocols. Now, if you don't know what those protocols are, or you're not familiar with them, or you don't know why they're secure or insecure, there's something you can go back and do some research on, because it is important that you need all of those and being able to work through them to be able to make that happen. And maybe you can work through those and trial the others. There's other protocols that you need to know about being secure and insecure in the exam objectives. Make sure you reference those. So well done on that one. I think we can get past our performance-based question. The tough ones are out of the way. Let's now go to some multiple choice. I think I got the next one here is multiple choice. Again, a question dealing with network plus exam objectives. That's our focus today. And the question is, click next on my side so it changes your screen. And the question is, which of the following would be most commonly used to contractually set the minimum terms for a service provided by a third party? If you are in a process of setting up a communication or a contract or a relationship with a third party, then you're going to need to know how to do this. And of course, you're going to need to know how to do it because that's part of the CompTIA exam objectives. Let's look at our possible options. Option A would be SLA. Option B would be MOU. Option C would be SOW. Option D is AUP. And option E is QoS. One of these would be the most commonly used to contractually set the minimum terms for a service provided by a third party. If you think you know what the answer is, go to professormesser.com/QA. Do not answer in the chat room. And if you aren't sure what the answer is, take a stab at it. Take a guess. Pretend we're sitting down at the exam. There's no Google available to you. There's nobody in the room you can ask. There's nothing you can do, but take a guess. Maybe that's the one you should work on and being able to get through. I think that's whenever I start working through these challenging questions, that's what I want to do too, is to be able to maybe figure out which are not the correct answer, and then maybe we can figure out what the correct answers are. This is one I also, I get hung up on the questions that aren't technical questions. I love the techie questions. I like the question we just had about protocols. I have a problem with process and procedure questions. So that's my stumbling block. So I really have to think about process, procedure. And by the way, if you don't like process and procedure questions, you're going to hate the Security Plus exam, which is almost all about process and procedure. That's effectively what IT security is about, is layering the process and the procedure right on top of the networking piece. And that's really focused on it. So which of the following would be most commonly used to contractually set the minimum terms for a service provided by a third party? Well, we certainly have one that is the majority. 58% of you said it's the SLA. We've got 20% though said QoS. We've got 13% said SOW. And then we've got a tie for fourth at 5% MOU and AUP. But certainly more than half of you said SLA. So the question is, which one of these would it be? Well, let's talk about contractual agreements. The one that we probably are most interested in here, and indeed is the correct answer, is the SLA. That's the service level agreement. These are the minimum terms. You would set these in a contract. Everybody would know what the minimum terms are. A common SLA might be, if we contact you that we're having a problem, you will respond in 2 hours. If we have a piece of hardware that has failed, you will be on site with a new replacement piece of hardware in 4 hours. You can set terms that way. And what's nice about that, they're in the contract. Both sides know what those contractual obligations are, those agreements that you've set for the service levels, so thus the service level agreement. And now you're able to perhaps even set penalties for that. We've said you have to be here in 4 hours with replacement hardware. If you're not here in 4 hours, we will are able to credit back service to you by $100 for every hour that you're late. And maybe that's the way you do it. There's all kinds of things. It's whatever you set up in the contract. That's why when you're building these contracts with third parties, they can often take a lot of time. There were other options in this question, things like the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. This is not a contract. The question really spoke about contractually. How would you set these minimum terms? But a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, is one that does not have any legal real binding. It's really just, I want to let you know, here's what I'm expecting of you. But nobody's signing anything. There's no, both sides aren't agreeing on a particular path. That's one of the things that does come in handy, is knowing what those things happen to be. But that is not something that you will commonly see as part of a contract. It's more of a casual understanding between Part A and Part B. A master service agreement, an MSA, is one where you can set up a master agreement. Maybe you're planning to have a long-term relationship with a customer across many different projects. Well, there are some terms that should really apply to all projects that you ever work on. Let's put those terms in a master service agreement. And then as we have the individual projects going on, we can simply add the things that are specific to that project. We've also got a statement of work, an SOW. Statement of works are usually done when there's a service to be done and you need to list out very specifically what steps or what things will be accomplished during that particular tasks. That's one if you're walking in to perform a function. Maybe you're going to install a router. Well, what is really expected of you? Do you just go in and screw the router into the rack and you're done? You walk out? Customer may be expecting you to load and test the operating system. What about configuring the interfaces? What about interfacing the integration, the authentication of that router with your database so that your administrators can access that device? Maybe it's about also cabling up the cables that are going to that router. So there's so many things that surround a router installation, and those things need to be listed so that everybody understands what the expectations are. You will see those listed in a statement of work. The last thing I had here, it's not on the slide, is quality of service. QoS is a way to prioritize different protocols as they're going through the network. It also really doesn't have anything to do with setting up a contract to set what minimum terms might be from a third party. Maybe the contract specifies what certain things might be occurring, like what quality of service might be in place, but that is not how you would set it in the contract. The contract is you're setting up a service level agreement associated with that. So if you did answer A, service level agreement, 60% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another question. Let's keep this going here. I've got another one available to you. Here it is. And the question deals with HSRP. And which of these would you be most likely to use HSRP? Obviously a networking term, isn't it? We got plenty of acronyms in Network Plus. I'm giving you, though, in this case, I'm not asking you what the acronym is, and I don't want you to tell me what the acronym is. Certainly don't put it in the chat room, but I do want you to apply that acronym. Whatever HSRP is, when would you be most likely to use it? Would it be with A, your switches will automatically prevent a loop? Would it be B, that your core switch has multiple power supplies? Would it be C, that you have multiple routers associated with a single internet connection? Would it be D, a remote site uses a mobile wireless link if the primary fails? Or is it E, bandwidth can be dynamically increased during busy times? A through E, you've got the choice now. If you're implementing HSRP, which one of these would you be implementing it for? Or at least most likely to implement HSRP. Maybe you think you know what the answer is, and if you do, don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to answer that one. Some of you probably have worked with HSRP if you're in the networking world now. It's not uncommon, certainly something you might run into, and certainly something that is very specifically listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. So make sure that if you aren't quite sure what an HSRP is that an insurance company? What is that? No, you're going to need to take a guess at this one and then later on go back and figure out what is this HSRP and how does it work. It may be something to really help out with your knowledge, especially if you're ready for the exam. So some of you in the chat room are going, I don't know. I have no idea. I've never worked with this. Take a guess. In fact, there may be certain ones in here that you recognize what that is and think, no, that's not HSRP. That's this other thing I know about. So maybe you can get rid of a couple and then narrow down the focus. If you are in your exam and you just don't know, don't leave it blank. If it's a multiple choice question, take a guess. You are not penalized for taking a guess and getting it wrong, but you also don't get any points if you leave it blank. So your best thing you can do is at least take a guess and be able to work through that. That might be something to work through and be able to understand what those things happen to be. So let's see how we did with this one. A number of you haven't finished Googling it. I can tell by the numbers that have come up. How do we do? Again, about 50%, 54%, at least we've got a little bit of majority. It says you have multiple routers associated with a single internet connection. That's what 54% of you think HSRP is. Number two would be 15% said a remote site uses a mobile wireless link if the primary fails. 12%, almost a tie for third, is bandwidth can be dynamically increased during busy times and your switches will automatically prevent a loop. Those two things are almost even. They are now exactly even on the screen. And the last one, and at 8%, single digits, your core switch has multiple power supplies. Let's talk about HSRP and what this is referring to. It's referring very specifically to something dealing with high availability. This is something that if you're really almost any size organization, you're dealing with some level of what we call HA, high availability. And it's being able to maintain uptime and availability of the network if there's a problem. But of course, the problems can be anywhere. Problem might be power. It might be an internet connection. It might be a router. It might be a switch. It might be a cable. There's so many places things can go wrong. And as part of your objectives as a network administrator, you need to design the network for as much resiliency as possible. Now, fortunately, manufacturers of these equipment, switches, routers, and the industry in general has created techniques and protocols to allow you to set up redundant systems, have them always up and running, and be able to move from a primary to a backup or be able to load balance across some of those things as well. If we see on this slide, the one we're most specifically interested in is HSRP, stands for a hot standby router protocol. As the name implies, that means you have more than one router sitting here, and it's a standby router, but it's turned on, it's hot. We call a hot standby one that is sitting there. It's got the latest configuration. If you update one configuration, it automatically copies it over, so you've always got an exact duplicate of that router sitting there. If the magic smoke comes out of the first router and it can no longer perform its duties to maintain that internet connection, the second router that was standby now becomes the primary. And now it's handling all those routing functions. The end users never know anything happened. Everything automatically switches over very, very quickly. Everything is there. It is a duplicate of what was running previously, and nobody knows that anything bad happened except you do. You'll get plenty of messages. Your phone will go off. You'll get the text messages. They'll call you from the help desk and say, we've had an outage. Our primary router is no longer with us. We need to have that fixed. But you know the network is still up and running because you have implemented HSRP, the hot standby routing protocol between these two devices. That is one that you do definitely have to know for the exam, and 53% of you did know this one. You answered C, you have multiple routers associated with a single internet connection. It would not be the second most popular choice at 16%. A remote site uses a mobile wireless link if the primary fails. That is a nice redundancy to have, but it is not redundant routers, which is when you would use the hot standby routing protocol. Type for our third would be bandwidth can be dynamically increased during busy times. Has nothing to do with HSRP. Your switches will automatically prevent a loop. That's more like spanning tree protocol. It's not really talking about routing and having redundant routers either. And then you've got your core switch has multiple power supplies. That would provide redundancy for power supplies in a single device, but that is not HSRP where you're providing redundancy between separate routers. In the chat room, it could be physical routers, it could be virtual routers. Doesn't matter. A router is a router. Whether it's one that exists in the physical world or whether it's a router that exists virtually, it's still a router performing that same function, and the same protocols would apply between those routers. So that's one where you do have to know these routing protocols, these redundancies, and how they're associated. There's so much in the exam to know, though. If you've gone through all my videos, you know there's an amazing amount of content. Of course, I highly recommend as you go through my videos that you take plenty of notes. That's only going to help you as you're studying for your exam. But some of you don't have time to go through every single one of my videos. Maybe you like that I have some of the graphics there, some of the pictures are there, and you would like to have a summary of what some of those things might be. So I've already built a set of notes for you. My course notes are right here. They're the N10006 Network Plus course notes, and I've created these course notes to have everything from every video all in one PDF file. This is a 15-page PDF that has everything from protocols to wiring and cabling to fiber connectors to understanding the different bandwidth types to understanding hot standby routing protocol. Everything is always listed in there as well. And it's a nice set of notes. The PDF is one that has an extensive amount of graphics, all of the diagrams that I've created, there's the wiring maps that I've created that are in my videos. Everything is in these set of course notes. This is also a great way for you to help support the website as well. I don't take donations. I like to give you something for the money that you would be giving me. And this is a great opportunity there. I can give you these course notes and they're only $10, something that you can buy right now. You can download today. You can put it on all of your mobile devices. Some of you even print it out, which is fine too, as long as you're the only one using it for those printouts. I want you to have access to this information. And this is just another way that we can do that here at Messer Studio. So this might be something to think about as well as you're planning for your exam. You've already watched the videos. You've got a great book, but you just need that last minute study source. This might be the one for you on the Network Plus course notes. You can find out more information about this at professormesser.com/NPCN, Network Plus course notes. That's what that stands for. And more details are there. You can also access this from any of the pull down menus on my site under the Network Plus banner. So that might be something that might be pretty useful for that. So I want to thank also for the folks that have purchased this. Thank you for your support. It is your support that helps keep this website going, keeps the lights on. I'm able to do these live streams. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. Let's go to another question. I've got one now. Let's move to switching. Finally, a technical question dealing with switches. And this one is one that asks about the best fit. Which of these would be the best fit for an unmanaged switch? Now I have to know the best fit for an unmanaged switch, which you might need to know as well if you're planning or designing your own network. Fortunately, I have some options for you. Which of these would be the best fit for an unmanaged switch? Would it be that configuration is managed through an SSH terminal session? Would it be that event logs are exported to a syslog server? Would it be that all devices will be configured on the same VLAN? Would it be that the authentication process references an external AAA server? Or would it be that voice traffic has a higher priority than other data? Maybe you have worked with unmanaged switches, and this would be a great way to recognize the differences between an unmanaged switch and maybe another one, whatever that other one happens to be. If you think you know what the answer is, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can tell me all about your knowledge of unmanaged switches. Unmanaged switch, we aren't talking from a tree. This is a network switch. Thanks for that clarification. That's one that on the exam, there is a very specific set of devices you need to be aware of. You need to understand. You need to know how they're implemented. And those devices are listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you have those objectives. You can go to professormesser.com/objectives. I'll simply redirect you over to the CompTIA site where you can download those. And an unmanaged switch is one of those things they ask about. So maybe you have even worked with an unmanaged switch before, and you can go through this list and say, yes, that's what I did with the unmanaged switch, or no, I didn't use this with an unmanaged switch. That's something that you can also determine what those big differences are between an unmanaged switch and perhaps something else. Being able to work through those. Maybe you know what the answer is. So have a look at the answers that are at professormesser.com/QA. Let's see how we're doing so far with those. I'm going to click the how do we do. Again, about 50%, which by the way is exactly what I'm shooting for on these questions. I want half of you to get these questions right. I want half of you to get these questions wrong. That's how I'm building out these questions. So it delights me when it hits 50% right on. That's exactly what I'm shooting for, because it would be a waste of your time if you got here and you knew every single question and got 100%. You're obviously ready to take your exam. I want you to learn something, and the only way you're going to learn something is if you get something wrong or something is not what you were expecting. So that's what I want to be able to do, and being able to work through those. So let's have a look at what you think the answers. And 54% of you said that all devices will be configured on the same VLAN. Number 2, maybe a tie for second, configuration is managed through an SSH terminal session, and the authentication process references an external AAA server. Then in third or fourth place, event logs are exported to a syslog server. And in last place, single digits, voice traffic has a higher priority than other kinds of traffic. So the question then becomes, what is this? How are we working through this? What are the things that are most important to know about an unmanaged switch? So let's have a look at unmanaged switches and what these are. Usually an unmanaged switch has almost no options available. You plug it in and you're done. If you were to buy a switch from a big box store, that's one where you're really just plugging it in and there's really no settings to configure on it at all. Is it plugged in? That's your only setting. Is the power turned on? And that's it. There's no other options for you. If you're in a home office or small office, this is pretty common to find an unmanaged switch. If you have, for instance, an all-in-one device at your house, that's your wireless router, it's your router to your ISP, it's a switch on the inside of your network, that switch is effectively unmanaged in most cases. There's not a lot of configurations available to you in being able to do that. It also means that you really can't do things like configure different interfaces to be on different VLANs. That's just not an option you're going to have. It's also not going to be able to integrate with other devices. You're not going to be able to configure it or set it up to respond to SNMP requests. It's not going to be able to integrate with a AAA server for authentication. It's very simple to have that there. So that's one where there's a benefit to not having these functions, and that's a lower price point. You don't have to pay as much if it doesn't do as much. So that's one advantage of having an unmanaged switch. And in some environments, you don't need any of these things. You don't need VLANs. It doesn't need to integrate with a AAA server. You don't, in fact, maybe you don't want a lot of options. An unmanaged switch might be for you then. So let's look through the options that you had on this answer. Indeed, those of you that answered C, the 55% of you, all devices will be configured on the same VLAN. That definitely describes an unmanaged switch. There's really no ability to set up VLANs and have those available. So that's definitely where you would find an unmanaged switch. You don't generally see unmanaged switches that allow you to configure the device through an SSH terminal session. In fact, rarely is there a configuration at all. If there is one, it's usually a web browser, because that's the people that will be using this, are those that only can work inside of a web browser. You would not expect someone working on an unmanaged switch to be able to SSH in. That's way beyond the capabilities of someone who's using an unmanaged switch. Event logs being exported to a syslog server. There's almost no third-party or server integration with these unmanaged switches. Again, authentication to an external AAA server, no integration at all, so therefore not something you would find on an unmanaged switch. And setting quality of service, which is where you are setting voice traffic having a higher priority than other data. QoS functionality, generally something you do not find in an unmanaged switch. All of those things that are not on the unmanaged switch are things you generally do find on a managed switch. So these more advanced switches might have one or more of these capabilities there, and that's where you would find really a larger environment. In my studio, I've got a lot of different devices. I have separate VLANs for voice. I have separate VLANs for backups. I have separate VLANs for cameras. So all of these things are on separate VLANs, so all of my switches are managed. So that's another thing to think about as you're planning and designing these networks, that you have the right kind of network for the right kind of information that you're setting up. Let's shift gears a little bit, do another question. Fit another one in here that talks about MD5. In which of the following would you be most likely to use MD5? And in fact, this is one I do want to really understand this, because I'm, again, not asking you what MD5 is. Maybe you even know what MD5 is, but I'm not asking you that. I want to know when you would be most likely to use it. Would you be most likely to use it to A, verify that a file was successfully downloaded, B, protect the content of a file sent over email, C, hide a document from other users on a shared drive, D, verify the publisher of software upgrade package. So you're upgrading some software, you want to verify the publisher, and E, encrypting the entire volume of a storage drive. So one of these would be the most likely use of MD5. If you think you know what the answer is, you can go to professormesser.com/QA. Do not answer in the chat room. And if you don't know, take a guess. Maybe you think you know when you would use MD5. Usually when you're using these MD5s, whatever they are, it's something you don't commonly see, but they can be very, very useful. I have a whole box of MD5s somewhere around here. Where are those? I don't know where those are, but they do come in handy. I do like to have an MD5 available from time to time. That made no sense whatsoever. So if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Again, if you are watching this on the replay, obviously the professormesser.com/QA is not going to be available for you right now. That won't be something you can use, but maybe you can tune in live for the next one. You can always go to professormesser.com/calendar. There's also a calendar link at the top of my website. You can find out when the next live event is and being able to work through it. MD5 is something you absolutely have to know for the exam. And a lot of the questions you get on the exam will ask you for technology, and they're not asking you to define the technology, just as I am not asking you. I'm asking you to implement the technology. How would you use this technology? That's what the exam is going to ask of you. So let's see how we did on this one. On this one, we're just completely torn. We're just not sure what this would be to have that. So we've got maybe a three-way tie for first. That's how torn we are. Almost an even 26-27% between A, verify that a file was successfully downloaded, B, protect the content of a file sent over email, and E, encrypt the entire volume of a storage drive. 15% of you said to verify the publisher of the software upgrade package you use MD5, and 5% said hide a document from other users on a shared drive would be what you would do with MD5. So let's talk about MD5 and what it is, and then we can decide maybe which one of these might apply. This is the message digest algorithm. One of the fathers of modern cryptography, Ronald Rivestin, he not only created MD5, but a lot of other things that we use with cryptography. He was the one that created this particular digest algorithm. This is effectively a hash. You are taking a file, a document, some other piece of information, and you're creating a special code that represents that information. It's one that is a very fixed set of text that represents that information. And in fact, I have some text on the screen here, and I took that text and I ran an MD5 generator, and it said, based on that text, here's the MD5 for that specific text. There was an earlier version of this called MD4 that had a 128-bit hash value, but we don't generally use MD4 any longer. In fact, we generally don't use MD5 much anymore either, at least not for super important things, because we found a vulnerability with it. Whenever you create a hash from a file or a document or an email or anything else, when you're creating that hash, it has to be something unique. If you were to create a hash of some other document, there should never be a hash that is identical to that one. So unfortunately, with MD5, in fact, this is a good example of two pieces of information that MD5 was run against, an MD5 algorithm that gave the exact same MD5 hash. The things that are different, you see there's a little red text that's different between those two. That should never happen. It's called a collision. and something that means that this particular hashing algorithm is not as good as we would have hoped. So that's not something that becomes very useful to have that there. So we don't often see it. In fact, researchers have even found that you can take a certificate, authority certificate, somebody checking the hash of that, and found that with MD5, we've got a collision. Somebody created this certificate, but it really didn't come from where it said it came from. So that's obviously why we don't use MD5 on our website certificates any longer. MD5, though, can be still very useful. Maybe it's not something where you're looking for the ultimate uniqueness, that a collision is fine for the type of things you're working on, or it's something that's so rare that for what you're doing, you'll be able to use it fine. And in fact, the place where you would use MD5, maybe even all the time, is to verify that a file was successfully downloaded. If you answered A, 27% of you got this one absolutely right, because what you can do is you can put a file on a web server, you can run an MD5 algorithm, and there's plenty that you can find to do this, either through third-party websites or utilities that you can download. If you're running Windows, you can right mouse click on a file and even create an MD5 hash of it. And you can post that hash to a website so that if somebody else is downloading that file, they can run an MD5 hash locally and then compare it to what you've got on your website. If that file was downloaded successfully and there's no problems, no corruption with that file when you downloaded it, those two MD5 algorithms should match. It would be very, very unusual to find a collision in that particular case. So it's very common to have an MD5 available. You may even see it if you're on a third-party website and you're downloading a file. You notice next to it, it says MD5 equals and some MD5. They might even also put a SHA hash and other hashes there too, so that you can run that hash algorithm on your side and make sure that the file that you have is exactly the same file that was posted on that website. It's a great way to verify that and have that available. So something that you might run into and might be able to use as you're running through and downloading these files, and you want to be sure that file is exactly what is there, you can use MD5. It would not protect the content of a file sent over an email. MD5 does not encrypt data. It's simply a hash. It's a digest representation of that data that's there. It doesn't actually encrypt the data. It's just telling you kind of a fingerprint of what that data happens to be. It would not hide a document from other users on a shared drive. You could do that using some type of file functionality within the operating system that you're using, but it has nothing to do with MD5. Verifying the publisher of a software upgrade package is usually done with a digital signature, and that's not something MD5 is commonly used for either, primarily because of the problems with the collisions that you would run into, and usually that involves some type of encryption, and that is something MD5 does not do. You also have encrypting the entire volume of a storage drive. MD5 doesn't do encryption, so it would not be MD5. In that case, the only possible answer, the one that is not only most likely, but really the only answer in this case, is A, verify that a file was successfully downloaded. Now, what if you've never downloaded a file, though, and run an MD5? Maybe you've never set up a digital signature. Maybe you've never worked with a certificate authority. Maybe you've never set up a VPN and configured VPN settings. Well, I have a lab for you where all of these things are waiting for you, where you can set up all of this yourself and give it a shot. Maybe there are some things that you would like to do in a lab environment, but you don't have an operating system. You don't have all the things that you would need to set it up. In fact, you don't even know where to start. How do you even configure a VLAN? How do you troubleshoot internet connectivity problems? Well, you can do it through the live labs. It's a great way to do it. You can find out about this at professormesser.com/netlabs. And the live labs are live devices that are out on the internet where I can simply connect to and use these servers in real time. These are Windows devices, along with labs that take you through step by step what you would do to help troubleshoot these problems. There's screenshots. I've got everything crushed into one screen here, but you can obviously connect to these and be able to work through all of these, make them a larger screen. You can print them out, and then you could step through them step by step. It not only explains what you're doing step by step, but it explains why you're doing it. Why am I stepping through and doing it this way? Gives you an idea of what those might be. So that'd be a great way to understand these and kind of step through how I can do this. Now, not only is this one here for troubleshooting internet, but all these guides, you can see a huge number of labs are listed here. You can find out what all these labs are. There's installing, understanding network protocols, installing VPNs, host-based firewalls, IPsec, configuring IP4 and IPv6, network connectivity, cryptography, Windows domains and home groups. It's all in these Network Plus labs. And maybe it's something you can look at as well. They're all online, no extra software to install. You simply connect to it through the web browser like I just did, and they are immediately available for you. If this is something you might want to use, you can always check it out at professormesser.com/netlabs. Make sure you follow that NetLabs link, because that's the one that's going to give you special pricing that you don't get if you go directly to the GTS Learning website. My friends at GTS Learning give you a special price if you follow this link, professormesser.com/netlabs, and instead of paying $169, you pay $109. So a nice discount there just for watching the study group. How great is that? And I want to thank again my friends at GTS Learning for having these live labs, making them available, and giving you the special price on those. Find out more, professormesser.com/netlabs. Let's do another question. I've got one now. That is a yoga question. No, it isn't. It just sounds like a yoga question. The question is, which of the following best describes macro bending? Macro bending. Which of the following best describes macro bending? I'm pretty sure that has something to do with yoga, doesn't it? No. Does it deal with A, an encryption key is reverse engineered? Is it B, a portion of the wires in a copper patch panel are cut? Is it C, equipment is sitting on top of a fiber run? Is it D, an excessive amount of wireless signals used in a confined area? Or is it E, light is leaking through a fiber cladding? One of these best describe macro bending. Macro bending. Maybe you know what macro bending is. It should have jumped right out at you. It's obviously one of those things that you do need to know when you're working through this. And I think that's one of the things would be nice to know, because it's in the exam objective, so you should absolutely understand and know what macro bending happens to be. There are a lot of little topics like this on the CompTIA Network Plus exam that deal with abbreviations, tons of acronyms, and these terms, these special terms that we use when we're talking about networking. And whenever I start looking at what these things are, they're important to know, because you're going to be using these whenever you're implementing a network. A lot of people will even say, as they're going through the Network Plus certification, that there's a lot here. Well, in networking, there's a lot. It tends to be that when we install these networks, we don't swap them out in 3 years like we do with a laptop. These networks are in for a long period of time. We're usually purchasing a router or switch, and it might sit there for 10 or 15 years before we ever swap that out, sometimes even longer. So you find that some of these technologies stick around for a very long period of time. And that means on the Network Plus exam, yes, older technologies are finally retired off the exam, but it seems like we just add to the stack. Every year, there's just more and more and more and more dealing with that. So I think that's one I'd like to deal with too, is understanding what all those might be. Maybe you happen to know what these things are. You'd be able to answer them as well. Let's see how we did on this one with macro bending. I've got 56% of us says that light is leaking through a fiber cladding. Maybe that's that 50% we were working through and trying to figure out. But we've got some other options here too. Tie for second, I would say, between 13 and 17% is that equipment is sitting on top of a fiber run or an excessive amount of wireless signals used in a confined area. And then maybe a tie for third would be that an encryption key is reverse engineered or a portion of the wires in a copper patch panel, copper patch cable are cut. So what would this be? Macro bending. Well, as you might think with this one, probably does have to do with fiber, and indeed it does. Whenever you're working with fiber, it's not quite the same as working with copper. Copper is one where you have a certain bend radius that's available to you, that you can only bend a certain amount, and you can really drop it on the floor, and you can run it through a particular area and bang it around, and you don't really have much of a problem doing that. But with a fiber, you have to be a little bit more delicate. It's a very, very thin strand of effectively glass, and you should consider that that's glass inside of it. It's a little more flexible than actual glass is, but it's still one that that is susceptible to cracking. It is susceptible to very easily damaging it. And that's why if you look at a fiber patch that you're working on, that fiber patch has a lot of protection around the fiber itself. If you look at what the fiber is, it's a very tiny strand inside of that. So that's why you see all of these cladding and protections around the fiber itself and around the connectors that you're plugging them into. There's two types of bending you need to worry about with fiber then. You can't just bend it willy-nilly. You can only bend it a certain amount and at a certain degree of bend as it's going from place to place. You certainly can't make 90-degree turns at all with fiber, not quite as nice as copper might be. There's two types of bends. One is a micro bending. If you were to set a device on top of the fiber and push down on that fiber, it bends a little bit of the fiber inside of it. Although it's glass, it's still relatively soft in the way that you can use it and operate with it. And if you put something on top of the fiber, it's going to leave a deformation. It's going to leave a mark inside of that fiber, and that does create a problem with sending the light through the communicating through that fiber. So that is a micro bend. A macro bend is when you bend and extend the fiber curve a little farther than what is acceptable for that particular type of fiber, where now you've bent it so much that the light can't make the turn, and it effectively comes out through the cladding. It's now not making the turn because you have macro bent the fiber and being able to work through that. And that was our question here, was the macro bending. So the light leaking through fiber cladding is indeed a macro bending. I threw a wrench in with the micro bending, which was C, equipment is sitting on top of a fiber run. A reverse engineering and encryption key, that's more of a brute force attack. That has nothing to do with macro bending. A portion of the wires in a copper patch panel being cut, well, that's not anything to do with bending at all. That's one that is a short or a complete cut of the cable. And then an excessive amount of wireless signal used in a confined area, it has nothing to do with macro bending. So if you didn't know, take a stab at it. I tried to get 50% of you to get that one right. Indeed, 57%. I think we did pretty well with that one. If you already have your Network Plus certification, or you have an A Plus certification, or perhaps even a Security Plus certification, one of the things that you can do to renew your certification is to earn continuing education unit credits. And what I do on these live events is that I allow you to get an hour of webinar type CEUs. There's different categories of CEUs. You can only get a certain number of webinar CEUs in a 3-year renewal period. And if you're collecting CEUs, this is your opportunity now to get at least 1 hour of that. And the way that you get that 1 hour of CEUs is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link on that page. Click that Contact Us. It'll bring up a form. I want you to put your name, your email address, so I can send you back the certification. And then you need to put a special code word in the message somewhere. I'm the one reading these, so you can put anything you'd like in the note, but somewhere in there you need to put the word macro bending. There's a special word of the month. So if you're following that process, I will send you back a CEU. That is the only way that you will get a CEU from me, is if you follow that exact process. If you get that word to me in some other way, doesn't work. You have to follow exactly what I just said. That way I know you watched the video, you understood the process I gave you, you knew that all of these things were in place, and you knew what the secret code word is, macro bending. So you can use that as well. So just another way that you might be able to earn CEUs if that's what you choose to do for your renewals. Just another thing to work through it. And you can see with the macro bending, of course, and with all of these, at the bottom of these slides, I give you where this particular question came from. It came from the N10 006 4.5 troubleshooting fiber issues. So that'd be the video that you want to watch, and specifies the version, the number associated with working through those. So another question, we have time for another one. Let's do another one. Which of the following would you be most likely to use a power converter? Which of the following would you be most likely to use a power converter? And this one's only 4 options. So maybe you do have an option here to work through this. Maybe that would be where you work through them. Which of the following would be most likely to use a power converter? Would it be A, provide power for a fluorescent LCD backlight? Would it be B, connect solar panels to main power? Would it be C, provide redundant power to a rack-mounted server? Or would it be D, connect a laptop to the 12-volt lighter outlet in a car? One of these would be most likely to use a power converter. Maybe you know which one it is. And if you do know which one it is, you need to go to professormesser.com/QA and answer which one of these it might be. This is another thing we often don't think about, because we're doing networking. We're connecting up routers and switches and other devices. But we often don't realize, oh, wait, all of those routers and switches and wireless access points need power. They need some type of of electricity to be able to keep running. And there are a lot of different ways to connect these to electricity, a lot of different voltages, a lot of different methods of connecting to power. One data center may be powered completely differently than another data center. You may have to order special equipment for your data center or specify what type of power you need for your data center. And because of that, you need to understand power, and you need to understand power converters as well. That's something that you're going to run into here eventually. So make sure you know what those differences might be. Now, I think a lot of you have used power converters in the past. I would almost guarantee that you have. So maybe we should figure out how you did on this one. Let's flip over and look at our power converter answers. Well, 47%, close to 50%, those 50% numbers I'm looking for, connect a laptop to the 12-volt lighter outlet in a car. 27% of you said to connect solar panels to main powers, where we would use a power converter. And then a tie for third between providing power for a fluorescent LCD backlight and providing redundant power to a rack-mounted server. So which one of these would it be? In the chat room, people are even going back and forth between inverter or converter. These are two different things, and you have to know the difference between a power converter and a power inverter. It sounds like the names are pretty much the same thing, except they are used in two very different ways. A power converter converts power from AC power, alternating current, to DC power, direct current. For example, coming out of the wall jack that you have in your office or your house is most likely alternating current, AC. And you're plugging into that AC connection. But your computer that you are using doesn't use AC. It needs direct current on the inside of your computer. So you have to convert that from alternating current coming out of your wall into direct current that's inside of your computer. The only way to do that is to have something that will do the conversion for you. If you've used a laptop, you've probably seen the big bricks that you would plug into the wall, and those AC converters, those effectively we call them power supplies for our laptop devices, because that's what it is. It's a power supply. It's actually a converter. It's converting from AC on one side of the power supply to the DC that your laptop needs. In the case of a server or a workstation or another device, that conversion process is probably inside the unit itself. In fact, you can see here, this is a power converter. You're plugging the cord directly in from the wall, and then you are converting inside the unit itself and providing DC on the other side. Something you can think back to your A+ studies in dealing with power supplies. The power supply inside of a computer is a power converter. That's effectively what it is. If you need to go the other direction, you already have DC power, but you need AC power, then you're going to need a power inverter. That's just the same thing in the other direction. For instance, solar panels create DC power, but your home uses AC, so you need some way to invert that back into AC that you can use it inside of your house. Same problem inside of a car. The battery inside of a car is DC. Everything inside of your automobile is running on DC. But you have a laptop, you need to plug in that power supply. The power supply is expecting AC. So we need to invert it. In fact, here's a common inverter that would plug into I guess we call it a cigarette lighter. Hardly anybody uses it as a cigarette lighter anymore, but it is an interface directly to the DC power inside of your car. And we're able to output that using this inverter to output it as AC that I can now plug anything into. I can charge my phones. I can plug it in directly to that connection. Very common way to use those particular technologies. So if we look at the different options we had, providing power for a fluorescent LCD backlight. Well, if you've worked with LCDs, you know that inside the LCD is an inverter where it's taking the DC inside of your laptop, and fluorescent lights that are backlights in these older laptops need AC power. So they use an inverter. So that would not be the right answer. Connecting solar panels to main power. Again, we mentioned earlier that they provide DC power and we need some way to invert them so that we can use AC power inside of our home. That is an inverter, not a converter. It would not be B either. Connecting a laptop to the 12-volt lighter outlet in a car, not the right answer either, because we're taking the DC inside of our car and inverting it into AC that we can use for our laptop. The correct answer, interestingly enough, 12% of us chose C, which is the correct answer, providing redundant power to a rack-mounted server. In this case, the redundant part was unnecessary, But we are, for instance, in the picture that we have here in this server, this one actually has redundant power, and we're connecting it up and using these two devices. This power supply that you're sliding in modularly to this rack-mounted server is one that is a power converter. So if you answered C, provide redundant power to rack-mounted server, you got that one absolutely right. So know your differences between a power converter and a power inverter, and you're going to be absolutely fine. Just another one of those things you have to know on the exam. They are on the CompTIA exam objectives. The exam objectives are incredibly important to know. Make sure you download them. They tell you everything in there that you have to know on the exam. People say, what's the most important part? Everything in the exam objectives is important. They could ask you anything that is in there. So make sure you know everything. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, a very quick way to download those objectives. Well, we've come to the end of another hour. I can't believe it. But I've got another one of these next month. You can always join me again on July the 12th. If this is past July the 12th, you're watching this replay, you can always find out when the next events are by going to professormesser.com/calendar. And of course, stick around for the next hour. I'm just going to open up the phone lines. It's a little more casual, being able to work through it. But or join me next week. We have a Security Plus study group next week. Of course, you can always follow what I do throughout the week by joining me on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, by typing in professormesser.com/Twitter/Facebook/YouTube/Instagram/LinkedIn/whatever it is. I'm sure you'll find me there somewhere. Don't forget about my Network Plus course notes. You can find those at professormesser.com/NPCN for Network Plus course notes. My thanks to the folks at GTS Learning. You can get your special pricing on the GTS Learning Live Labs by visiting professormesser.com/netlabs. And as I mentioned, don't forget about all of my live events and things going on. You can find those at professormesser.com/calendar. If you have to leave us now, thanks for joining us. Stick around for the next hour. I'm going to open up the phone lines. You can call in. I'll take questions from the chat room, and we'll find out everything else that's going on. But until then, we will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. And I see indeed some of you are heading back to work and working through those. The Linux distribution that I use on my server, I have some Linux running in this room, but it's an embedded Linux. In this room, my mixer that's over here is running Linux. It is all digital. So everything you're hearing from me is going in analog. It's being converted effectively to voice over IP, and then I'm able to manipulate it and send it out analog. So I can do a lot of interesting things inside of my mixer because of that. And the mixer itself is running on an embedded version of Linux. My servers that we're on, if you're on my website right now, the server is also running Linux. Oh, I got stuck there. There we go. My server is also running Linux and being able to work through those. So that's another nice thing to have there and available. Let me open up the phone lines, though, right now. This is a manual process I do on this side, so bear with me for just a moment while I connect everything up and get it running. It's all a cloud-based service, so it's very easy for me to click a few buttons and go to my shows and zoom up and host a show and figure out the phone numbers and start a show. So many buttons to click. Who knew? And then I call in, and then I have you call in. So with that, get that going. And then you're going to hear,
thank you for
well, you're welcome. And then I type some things in, if I can, with my mouse here. What do I type in? I type this, and I type this thing.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Well, we know the problem there, don't we? Let's click this thing, and then the PIN number.
Welcome.
So now I'm there, and you can be here too by going to 855-785-7545. It's a toll-free number here in the United States. Or you can call me for free on Skype. No Skype minutes required by putting a +1 at the beginning. +1 855-785-RJ45. You can get here as well through all of those. Or send me notes in the chat room. Another thing we can do is step through the chat room. To finish the Linux question on my servers, it's a CentOS. So I'm running a lot of different things on there and working through those different pieces and having them there. And if you do call in on the phone lines, just sit there on hold. You'll hear a beeping noise as I go to the phone lines, like I'm going to do right now with the 518 area code. I'll click that. The caller will hear a noise. Hello, caller. Are you there? What's your name? The caller's
Me?
Yes, it's you. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, I'm not from Illinois. You got me by surprise there. I just want to say thank you for all the hosting you do and whatnot.
Thank you.
And
Thanks
I was
for
just curious, do
attending.
you have any way we could get an email every time you decide to go live?
Oh, absolutely. So there is on
Just as a
my
reminder.
website, there is a registration process that's there that I put at the top of the screen at the beginning of the week. I usually put it up on a Sunday. And if you sign up to that registration list, then it makes I send out an email about 5 minutes before we get started, and that's a nice way to. A lot of people like getting an email to have that there as well. I also automatically 5 minutes before we get started, I send a tweet. I post to Facebook and I post to Google Plus because there are still people over there on Google Plus, and I do it that way. I also have a way from my website. There's a calendar on the right sidebar where you can add it to a calendar event. So if you maintain your own calendar on your mobile device or wherever you do, you can create your own calendar event. So whatever process you already have for alerting you will do that as well. So I try to find a lot of different ways to make that happen. Maybe one of those will fit with what you're trying to do.
All right, thank you. And one more thing.
Sure.
You were talking about the macro bending to send you the email and whatnot.
Yes.
What is that about? Like how does it help you with the exam is what I'm asking.
It doesn't help you with the exam at all. So this is one thing. Let's say though that you've taken the exam, you've gotten your Network Plus certification, and in 3 years that Network Plus certification will expire. And so it's not a good for life certification. You always have to renew it, similar to a Cisco certification, similar to other certifications you'll run into out in the industry. So one of the things you can do is you can do a lot of different things to renew that certification. CompTIA has a training program you can take, and if you take that training program, you've renewed your certification. They also, if you've taken a higher level certification, let's say you pass your Security Plus, that will also renew your Network Plus certification. But some people like to do a lot of different things. They like to attend an industry seminar. They like to do a webinar. They like to create their own content and post it online. They like to attend a CompTIA event. And you can collect what they call continuing education units by doing that. And if you collect enough of those, that will also renew your certification. So what I do on these webinars is that 1 hour I can apply towards that CEU list. So I think you need 30 CEUs or 40 CEUs for the Network Plus to be renewed. So this would count towards one of those during that 3-year period.
Okay. You answered my question, even though I worded it weirdly. So thank you so much.
No problem.
And that's all.
Thanks for the call.
All right. Bye-bye.
Whenever the CEU process is changing dramatically. If you haven't looked lately, CompTIA even changed it again. They now allow you to buy one of their CertMaster training courses, go through it. I think it's $99 or something like that, maybe a little bit more. But you can go through the whole course, and that gives you all the CEUs you need. So if you're one of those people you waited until the last day, like tomorrow, my Network Plus certification expires, what am I going to do? They got you covered. You can go on CompTIA's website. You can buy this thing. Let's see if I can find it real quick. You can buy that, and that gives you all the CEUs you need to do all of the renewals. It's an interesting plan that they've got going on there. Renewal. I'll type it in here. And the continuing education page, just go to the Google machine and do CompTIA renewals, and you'll be able to see all of the different things that you can have available, continuing education units, renew with a single activity. And this is what they do. You can take their recertification exam series. You can take their CertMaster CE. There's a lot of different things you can do, but they have a whole list of things that you can do. This one thing that will renew your certification. So just another one of those things to think about as you're going through and working through your certifications, having them there. Let's try another phone line, the 405 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
DJ.
Hey, DJ. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Oh, I've been studying for the A plus off and on for the last couple of years, and I've taken it 3 times and gotten close, but still haven't passed it. I was wanting to know, like, if doing the network plus or security plus, because it's just one test, if I should maybe switch gears and go for one of those first instead.
It's certainly not an unusual thing for many people to do. Many people who come to my website have no intention of getting their A plus. They may even already be in an IT role. They might already be working at a help desk or with workstations. They're already doing some of the things that you would need to do for an A plus. And it's not something that would help them in their career goals. So they start with the Network Plus, or perhaps even more commonly, the Security Plus, because a lot of people in the federal government in the United States require a minimum level of certification to have a job in IT for the federal government or some of our government contractors. And the Security Plus is one of those minimums that you need. Other people are wanting to go into networking, and maybe they have a plan to get a more advanced Cisco certification in the future, but they need the fundamentals right now, and they want to get a certification under their belt, so they start with the Network Plus. So it's certainly something you can do. There are no prerequisites for the Network Plus and no prerequisites for the Security Plus. There's very little overlap between the A plus and any of those others. So it's not something that is required before you move on. And in fact, a number of people just start right in the middle and work their way up from there. I took it in reverse. I took my Security Plus first, then my Network Plus, then my A plus, but I've never been one to follow convention.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that helps quite a bit. I found, I'm looking for a job, and I found one where they require, if you don't have the Security Plus, then to, quickly obtain it.
Yep.
So I was thinking, if I just, jumped on that, then, I might be able to get in and get started. I've been trying to get into the IT field for the last 5 years and managed to get somewhat of a position that works with IT and a lot of other things too, with a tax service. But the problem with that is it's seasonal. So
right,
just trying to break in the field somewhere and trying to get a certification to better my chances of landing an IT gig somewhere.
Sure. And that's actually a common thing. A lot of people hiring, a lot of hiring managers will put Security Plus as the minimum thing that they would like you to have for whatever role that they're putting you into. And that's why I have a lot of people come to the site and they're just starting at Security Plus. One thing that's nice about that, when you compare it to A plus, those are very different exams with very different content, not only in the content topics, but also in the style. CompTIA's Security Plus is a lot more process and procedure, and the A plus is a lot more technical details and feeds and speeds and interface types. You get a little bit of that in Security Plus with things like port numbers and protocols, but it's a very different thing than what you see with A plus. You may find the Security Plus to be easier than A plus. It just depends on what you know and how you study.
Okay. Well, cool. Very good. Yeah. My brother worked in the IT field for about the last 10 years or so. I asked him, is Security Plus any more difficult than A plus? And he said, in his opinion, it wasn't more difficult, but just, the same amount of information, just in a kind of a different direction mostly. So
I think he's absolutely right. I don't find its difficulty level to be more difficult. It's just a completely different kind of topic.
Okay. Very good. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Good luck with that. That's a good task to go through too. And also think about where you're going, especially if someone who's hiring says you should have a Security Plus. Okay, got it. That's what I'm going to do. I should definitely take that lead and work through it. Let's take the lead of someone calling from 559 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello, sir. Abdul Latif. I'm from Morocco.
Oh, welcome.
I have just called to ask. Yes, thank you. I just called to ask about the discount, because before you told me that I can benefit from the discount because I study in university.
Yes.
So my university does not provide an educational email. So I tried, but I don't know how to because I'm from Morocco, not from the USA.
Right.
So I guess it differs.
What I would recommend doing, for those of you not familiar, I'll even talk about this a little bit. For those of you who don't know about CompTIA's academic marketplace, they specify not just the United States, but other countries. If you're a student, you get a dramatically discounted price for your exams. And in the United States, if you have an EDU email address, that's a common way to get the certification. And I mean very discounted. For example, if we look at an individual, let's see if we've got vouchers, certification vouchers for the Network Plus exam, and you can see that the educational discount is $145. That's a pretty big discount off of someone who does not have that educational discount available. But you also run into these scenarios like you are, that in your country, students don't necessarily have an EDU email address. I would contact CompTIA directly. They've got links that are on the CompTIA Academic Marketplace. There are, I think right at the bottom is a contact us link, and there's their email, academichelp@comptiastore.com, and ask them about this and say, I'm a student, I qualify for this academic discount, because they like to have a qualification and know it's there. And they may have another way for you to do it. Maybe you're gathering something from your school. And they probably know that there's other ways to do this. So contact them. They'll probably have some great options for you to be able to make that happen.
Oh, thank you. I really don't know how to describe you. You are amazing. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
Good luck. That's and absolutely take advantage of those academic discounts. There's huge discounts there. If you're in school and wondering, should I get certified? There might be some financial reasons that are a huge advantage to getting certified. Let's go to the 571 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yes. How you doing?
Hey, what can we do for you? What's your question?
Though I heard you explaining to people already, my question is, if you fail the A plus maybe 2 times, what can you do? Do you have to continue taking it?
There is you can continue taking it, but there are some caveats involved that you need to be aware of. You can take these exams from CompTIA. There is an exam taking a retake policy. I'm going to pull that up real quick so we can have a look at the CompTIA certification retake policy. It's on their website. You can just Google retake policy CompTIA and it will bring you to that, which means that if you fail your first attempt, there's no waiting period between the first and the second attempt. But after you've failed 2, you have to wait to take the third for at least 14 calendar days. And it actually is the third and any subsequent attempt. So you can take it the third time. If you don't pass, then you have to wait 14 days, 14 calendar days before you can take the fourth one. If you fail that one, you have to wait 14 calendar days, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got some options there when you're looking at what you should do. Now, as far as what you should be doing to help pass the exam so that you don't have to go through 4 and 5 and 6 sittings for a single exam, is the best thing I can tell you is to get your hands on the exam objectives. They tell you everything you need to know for the exam. Let me see if I can pull up my exam objectives just to give you a feel for what these are. For the people that have never seen these, if you don't have the exam objectives, you should stop everything that you're doing. You should go to the CompTIA website and you should download the objectives straight away. There's just no question that's what you should be doing. I think I have a little bit of an older version of the objectives here, but it has exactly the same information as the existing version. They just prettied it up a little bit. But if we look at this, the first section is network architecture. Section 1.1 says explain the functions and applications of various network devices, including routers, switches, multi-layer switch, firewall, HIDs, IDS, access point, content filter, load balancer, hub, analog modem, packet shaper, and VPN concentrator. There's your list of things you need to know. And if you can look at a router and explain this is what a router does and how I would use it, this is what a switch does and how I would use it, this is what a multi-layer switch does and how I would use it, this is what a firewall is and how I would use it, and you can go through that entire list, then you've got 1.1 down and you can move to 1.2. This is a great checklist. So if you find on the exam that things aren't what you would expect, you should have already referenced this in the in the objectives. And if you can check off everything in the objectives, you're ready to take your exam. One important thing to also think about when you take an exam, and for some reason maybe you don't pass it, they will print out for you at the testing center right after you're done the results page. That will not tell you the exact question that you got right or wrong, but what it does is tell you what section from the exam you got right or wrong. So it might tell you got a question wrong in section 1.1 that had to do with explaining the functions and applications of various network devices. Make sure you get that piece of paper before you leave your testing center. In fact, you should get that piece of paper whether you pass or whether you fail. If you pass, it proves that you passed. And if you fail, you know exactly what to study for your next exam, or at least you know some of the places where you're having some challenges in memorizing this information. When you leave that testing center, there's no easy way for them to print this out. You can't call CompTIA and say, I didn't get the piece of paper. They don't have a way to do that. And even if you try to call Pearson VUE, they don't have a way to do that for whatever ridiculous reason. I don't know why they just don't email it to you, but this is what they do. So there are many people that have gone to these testing centers, and before they leave, they go, well, our printer's not working, sorry, and they leave. Don't leave. There's a printer working somewhere there. Have them call their tech support line for Pearson VUE, which they have right then. Find a way to get that piece of paper. It's an incredibly important piece of paper with a lot of great intel there. So it's another one of those nice things that can help you if you run into problems on the exam and can help you study for the next one.
Thank you. And another question: do you have to go through A+ before going to Security Plus and then Network Plus?
Thankfully,
and
no.
Also,
yeah.
If you are having,
go ahead.
If you do not pass the A+, but you are doing webinar, is it advisable to be doing those things while, try to get your certification?
There is no specific path that you have to go down. CompTIA doesn't have a prerequisite for the A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus, which means there's nothing you have to do before you sit and take the Network Plus or the Security Plus or the A+. You can walk in and take them in any order. You can just take the Security Plus and never take any of the others. You could take the Network Plus and never take any of the others. It's completely up to you. And in fact, I did mine, as I mentioned, in reverse that most people do. I took my Security Plus first, then I took a Network Plus, then I took my A+. So I did what CompTIA says is the backwards way to do it. But it's a very common thing that some people will only need their Security Plus and they never take the Network Plus or A+. So it really depends on what your goals and objectives are and what's going to be important for your path, whatever you're trying to do with your career, whatever you're trying to do with these certifications. That's where you should be focusing on. Don't think that you have to go through all the A+ and then all of the Network Plus, when ultimately all you really wanted to do was take the Security Plus. You could jump right to the Security Plus and take that right now.
Thank you, because I'm going through a training, and majority of us did not pass the A+. They make us start Network and Security Plus, and I do not know why we have to be doing all at the same time.
That's a lot to do at the same time. I don't necessarily recommend that either. I think biting off one at a time, taking the exam, learning the next one, taking the exam is probably a better way to go about doing it. But there are people that will sit down and take a lot of certifications at one time. If that's something you're comfortable with, that can be done as well.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for the advice and whatever you are doing for us. Thank you.
You're extremely welcome, and good luck with that. That's a lot to take on all at one time. Best of luck with that. Well, let's go to, perhaps even a Skype call. Let's see if I push the correct button. There we go, and get the caller going. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yes, Professor Messer. I'm calling from Iceland. My name is Daryl.
Welcome, Daryl. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
Thank you for taking my call. Hey, I just want to say that I really appreciate everything that you are doing for the community. I have my A+ and I have my Network Plus, and I've been listening and watching you for about a year, and you've just been so helpful with all of your live group studies, and I just really wanted to say thank you so much for what you do.
You're so welcome. You don't sound very Icelandic to me, Daryl, if I may say.
Well, I am from the United States, but I married an Icelander, and I've been living here for about 10 years.
Oh, amazing.
So, and I've decided that I wanted to try to make a career move. I wanted to do something in IT. My question for you is, I have seen that you have on your website, you have CCENT, CCNA notes.
I do.
And I'm wondering if you were going to do a live study group at some point for Cisco.
I am wondering that as well, Daryl, because I have not decided yet on the extent of that.
Okay.
I have one other product, other training tool that I have just completed for the CCNA or the CCENT or the ICND1 to go along with the course notes. Yes. And I'm almost ready to publish that new thing, and then I have to figure out what I want to do with this. Do I want to create a video series from it? Do I want to do some live study groups like this one? Because that would be an easy and fun thing to set up. What do we do next? I'm just not sure. If other people have ideas or thoughts or suggestions, I'd love to hear them as well. I do like to hear what people are thinking. And if I've got an extra Wednesday in the month, so why not do another study group? Not that it has to be on a Wednesday or anything, but I have considered it, and I think it's a really good idea.
Well, I want to throw it out there because I remember before I had my certifications for A+ and Network+, I remember listening to these questions that you would ask, and you know, in the beginning I would miss 7 out of 12 or 8 out of 12, and now after my certification on these two, I look back and I find that I can answer these questions that you're asking fairly well. I mean, I usually get easily more than half when I'm listening to your groups. I continue to come back because it just keeps it all fresh, and I would love to be able to do that with the Cisco products too. So I would say it would be great. One other question I have for you is I decided to sidestep the Security Plus for the CCNA exam because it's so similar to the Network Plus. There's a lot of parallel lines of study.
It sure is.
And I want to come back to my Security Plus when the next exam comes out. Do you have any idea? I know it's got to be coming close.
Yeah, specifically Security Plus, all of those dates have now been announced for Security Plus. The whatever those new course notes or course objectives have already been released as well. The new SY0501 Security Plus will be released on October the 4th of this year. So we're in June 14th as we sit here today. In October, the new exam will be available and ready for you to take. Will there be any study materials for the SY0501 on October 4th? Probably not many, but at least you could sit and take the exam if you wanted to. The exam objectives for the SY0501 are available right now to download from CompTIA. I am in the process of building out my new SY0501 course. It is currently in production and creating all those pieces. It is a dramatic difference over the 401. I would say almost half of the content is new. They have really redesigned the entire exam. It's in a completely different structure. A lot of the content is still there, but half the content is brand new stuff. So it's not one where you can study for the 401 and then walk in and take the 501 exam. For those of you that are studying for the 401, CompTIA says they're going to keep the 401 around until July of 2018. So a year from now, you'll still be able to take the 401 exam. And also keep in mind that this is the version of the exam you take. It's not the version of the certification you earn. Whether you take the 401 exam or the 501 exam, you get exactly the same certification at the end of this. So if anybody's listening to this and wondering, oh, should I wait to take an exam? My answer for anybody who ever asks, should I wait, is absolutely not. Never, never wait to get certified. There's way too many good things that can happen because you have that certification. And at the end of the day, you're only waiting to take a new exam. You're not waiting to earn a new certification because it's exactly the same certification that you would earn. But the numbers are out there. Download the new objectives. Have a look. Maybe the new objectives sync up with you better than the old objectives might. overnight. I'm not feeling that exactly at this point. I'm just seeing a lot of work that I still have to do, but I have gone through both of the objectives line by line. I have matched them all up, and I can tell you that about 50% is new. So there's another curve that we're all going to have to go through for the 501 exam. That's
great. Thank you again for all your help, and I'm going to keep watching, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's something for you planning Security Plus. For those of you out there that are looking at Security Plus, that is definitely something to consider and think about for all of those. Let's go back to the phone lines, holding for 17 minutes. Thank you, caller 559. What's your name?
Yeah, my name is Hemant. I'm calling from London.
Oh, welcome. Well, thanks for holding for so long.
Nah, I was waiting to talk to you.
What can we do for you?
Thank you very much, by the way, for all the videos and what you're doing for us.
My pleasure.
I got two questions, actually. One of them is very simple. I mean, I'm planning to do my Security Plus next week. And after that, should I go for the Cybersecurity Plus or should I go for CASP? What do you think?
It's a good question. The CSA Plus is CompTIA's latest exam series. That's what they're calling their Cybersecurity Analyst certification. The CSA Plus is what they used to go from Security Plus to the CASP exam. And there was nothing in between. There was kind of a big jump between Security Plus and the CASP. So they created something in the middle, and that's the CSA Plus. If you talk to CompTIA, they say that you take the Security Plus first, then the CSA Plus is one level up, and then the CASP exam is one level up from that. So it just depends on what your objectives are and what you're trying to do with security. With anything dealing with security, it becomes very niche-y in the security market right after you get past Security Plus. And you should, if you haven't talked to somebody who's working in IT security or doing the type of security that you're interested in, because you can really go a lot of directions. Do you want to do intrusion prevention? Do you want to do firewalls? Do you want to work on operating system security? Do you want to do a penetration testing? Do you want to do wireless security? There's so many different ways to go. And in IT security, you almost have to know all of these things. So if you're planning a direction of what you're trying to do in the future, it might be useful to do a little bit more research and find out what are people asking for. Because CSA Plus came out a number of months ago, not a lot of hiring managers even know it exists yet. I think we're starting to see a little traction now, but there hasn't been a lot up to this point. So I'm concerned for a lot of people that they will get their CSA Plus and they'll show up somewhere and go, I have my Security Plus and my CSA Plus, and they'll say, what is it? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what a CSA Plus is. We really wanted someone who has this certification. So it's always useful to maybe do a little bit of recon. And of course, that's a very geographical thing. It may be very different in London than it is in New York or LA. So it's always useful if you know somebody who's in security to ping them. There's probably also a security-based user group in London, almost certainly. In the United States, we have the ISSA, which is a security type user group. There may be a similar thing in London. I always recommend going to these user group meetings, not only because you learn some interesting things, but the people who are at the meeting are the people who are hiring for security roles and are in some of the biggest companies in your particular geography. And it's great to network that way, because if you walk in and you know somebody or you see somebody, or they can recommend, because everybody in that security group, and I'm talking as someone who used to work in IT security, they all talk to each other all the time, because you have to, because these threats are just crazy that we're dealing with. So they always know where the open positions are, even if they're not at their company. And they go, oh yeah, Paul's looking for an open position over here. You should talk to him. That's something that's not just, I talk about networking with routers and switches. You also have to think about networking with people. And sometimes that can be your best reconnaissance to figuring out what certification do I take next. You're sort of going the long way around, but ultimately I think it may be a better path.
All right. Thank you very much for that info. And the other one is like off the topic question.
Sure.
I'm planning to set up a VPN for my home. Yeah. So should I do a software one, hardware one, and is there any way I can do it on my own, or do I have to buy a VPN service provider?
You can do it a couple different ways. In my environment, I have not just a sort of an entry level wireless router that I have at my place, but I have kind of a higher end wireless router. And it's one that built into my wireless router is VPN software. I think it's a Netgear. It's one of their higher end units. It's kind of the one that has gigabit on the back, and it's focused on gamers, and there's a lot of quality of service functions, but their VPN is built into that piece of hardware. And they give you the software to load up on your mobile device or on Windows or Mac OS. And you can connect to it from anywhere and connect back to your home through a VPN tunnel. And now it's like you're sitting at your home, which is, I think, the benefit of having that piece of equipment at your home. You can do similar things with Linux and even Windows to some degree and just have that system sitting in your house and doing port forwarding to that device. That's another thing you might want to consider. If you're getting a third party for VPN, that's useful if you're in a coffee shop, you're out of your house, and you want to encrypt and have privacy when you're on these public networks. That's at least the minimum you should be doing. But of course, that's giving you encryption up until the VPN provider. And then after that, everything is in the clear. And it doesn't provide you access to your home. If you want to print to your printer at home, you want to access files on your file system at home, that third-party service wouldn't really necessarily provide you with that functionality. I find it better to run it as hardware just because it's easier to manage. The disadvantage, of course, is you don't have the flexibility you have with running something like OpenVPN at your house on a Linux machine. I guess in some cases, it depends on how geeky you want to get and how detailed you want to get to configuring it, because configuring VPN, not the easiest thing in the world. It is people who do this for a living, and I used to do this for a living, set up IPsec VPNs, site-to-site VPNs, as well as client-based VPNs. There's a lot of complexity associated with this because you're dealing with networks and port forwardings and NATing and encryption and certificates, and you have to make sure you understand all of the nuances and minutia with all of those things. And that's why I kind of like the hardware-based VPN that's built in to my wireless router, because it's one thing. I give it a password, I download the software, I'm done. The software is already configured for me. It connects automatically. It's turnkey. And as long as you don't need anything more than that, that might be a good idea for you. But you've got plenty of options.
All right. Thank you very much for that info as well. And can't thank you enough for what you're doing.
Thank you, sir. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did say wireless access point. I have actually in my home, I have a wireless router in one room, and I have it is a wireless router, but it's acting as a wireless access point. I'm not routing with it in another room because my house is there's a lot of space. So on one end of the house, I wouldn't be able to communicate to wireless network on the other end of the house. And I wanted to be out in the yard as well. So I wanted to be able to get out to the outside too. So I kind of put my wireless access points, wireless router in one place and access point in the other place, so that I can get to the corners of the house and kind of cover the middle. It's kind of weird. So I have three I technically have three wireless routers, one for the studio, two for the house, using one of them as an access point, using one of them as a router. Am I using it as a router? I'm not. Actually, I'm using a separate router as a router. It's a long story. I really, one of these days, should draw a diagram of how I've got this nonsense set up, because I've got it in a spreadsheet. This is on this VLAN. This is connecting here. I'm connecting my closets this way. There's gigabit connectivity here. There's a link aggregation between the two. I've got the audio on one VLAN. I've got these security cameras on another. It's an involved thing. Oh, I like that you have the doing the VPN through AWS. That's a pretty good example of setting up a VPN. I did a few of those as well. Oh, I see that I have disconnected from my phone calls. Have I disconnected? Nope, that was something else. But that's one of those where you can do VPN so many different ways. Doing IPsec VPN through Amazon Web Services is a great way to do it. I should have even thought of that, because you can do a lot of things to Amazon in the Amazon cloud, and it costs nothing to do it up until a certain point. When you use a certain amount of bandwidth, that's where it costs money. So that may be something to think about too, is how do I want to connect? Do I want to try a number of different things? Amazon Web Services can be a great way to do just some testing. Do your own labs. Set up a network. Set up a virtual router. Set up a virtual firewall. Set up an IPsec communication from point A to point B, which would be the Amazon Web Services. It's a great way to do it. And as long as you don't exceed the amount of traffic or the configurations they have set up, you don't have to pay anything in many cases. You have to check the Amazon pricing in your area or what you're connecting to, and you want to be very careful about not exceeding that. But I think I set up an IPsec VPN, and I was doing it for a lab, and I forgot about it, and I got a bill for the next month, and it was $15 because I just left it on, and it connected automatically whenever data was going through it. But that wasn't bad. For a month, $15, and it was a lab, and we expensed it back. It was not a big deal, but it was just shows you how inexpensive it can be just to turn it on, let it go, which is the beauty of doing these things in the cloud these days. It's just fantastic to have that functionality and have it there. But I really should. You're right. I should take all of the things that I am doing with these networks that I've set up, and I should really do some documentation so that you could see, how did I set this up? I've got my bird feeder network. I've got a security camera network. I got a voice network. I've got this network that you're on seeing this. I think I have another VLAN in here for something else. I wish I could remember what that was. And of course, I have to route all of these. How am I routing it? For the most cases, I set up layer 3 routers for that, and then have a separate router to the internet, which has its own challenges, because a lot of the internet routers that you run into will only route and NAT from the outside to the inside. They won't route past an inside network. And on my network, where I have a corporate network, and then there's sort of an inside the house network, and I keep those two networks completely separated, I can't route from the internet all the way through my studio and then another hop. These home routers that you get, these wireless routers you get, for some reason, they have dummied them down. I know the reason. They're trying to sell their higher end equipment. They will only route to one network on the inside. You can't do a static route that gets you to another hop. It won't go there. I did a whole packet trace, and I've got somewhere the packet traces for that. And you contact Netgear and say, hey, this Netgear router isn't doing this. They go, yeah, it doesn't do that. Yeah, we don't do that. But it took me a process, because it tried to do it. It did it for a little bit and then it stopped doing it. And I'm wondering, why is it not doing this? Well, that's why, because it doesn't do that. They have built it into the code. They've dumbed down their system so it doesn't work that way. So it's one of those things you have to think about when you're trying to buy another router, another switch, a wireless router. What are you going to do? These are the limitations you run into. Sometimes it makes sense to upgrade to that next level, because it's the little things that'll end up biting you without even realizing it. Now, I ultimately just ended up connecting directly and avoiding the problem all the way around. Well, we've come to the end of another Network Plus study group. Hopefully we had some fun with the questions this time. I want to thank you for joining us in the chat room. Thank you for your phone calls and the questions you had about that. Of course, I'm here all the time. You're welcome to ask questions 24/7 in the chat room. The general chat is always available on my website. I'm usually checking in from time to time there. You can always click the Contact Us link at the top of the page, which effectively is contact me. It goes directly to my email, and I can converse back and forth with you there as well. Thank you for your ongoing support with all of our course notes and our offline courses. Thanks for joining me on these live events. Don't forget about the next Network Plus study group next month, and next week at this time, I do a Security Plus study group. Maybe you'll check in for that one as well. And until then, we will see you next time on the Network Plus study group. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you then.